was a Finland-driven thing, and then we had from service providers, we had a company called Sofigate and a company called CGI, and I'm here today with Valmet, Sofigate and CGI to present the co-creation results. So what we will do, we will go through the operating model, the mindset around it, and then it's also an invitation for all of the companies out there. We are forming a kind of co-creation forum around the data, similarly to what we did already with this operating model. And that forum will then start to kind of form itself somewhere after the summer break. So that's what we are going to do today. And like I said, I have Markus with me here in the sofa, and Teemu then unfortunately was not able to come here face to face. So Teemu is taking it from another location. And having said that, now it would be, Teemu, your turn to start with the mindset and the thinking that what we have been thinking about when we created this standard. So Teemu, go ahead and let's see first that we can find your face and so forth.
All right, thank you, Petri. Yes, so I'm Teemu Laakso from the consulting company CGI, and I'm the director for enterprise data management, so data strategy and management. And the first question obviously is, why do we want to do such a thing? Why do we make this kind of operating model? So the reason is that transformations or digital transformations, they still fail like 80% of the cases. Depending on who you ask, is it Gartner or Harvard Business Review or somebody else, there might be different reasons, but typically it's data or it's the scalability of pilots to be business as usual, but data is in the core. And this cannot be fixed by technology. We have tried that for 20 or 30 years, and we still have the same problem. So we should admit that data is not IT. It is something different. We cannot fix it by technology. So we need a mindset change. That is the kind of key word here. Why is this? A colleague from our network made a study and asked the question, where does customer data come from? And 75% of the people answering said that customer data comes from CRM. And the next question is obviously, where does electricity come from? Or where does milk come from? Does electricity come from the electricity socket? Does milk come from the milk cabinet, dairy section of your supermarket? Obviously not. So we need to think about what happens before the data is in CRM, what happens before the power is in the socket and before the milk is in the supermarket. So in supply chain thinking, 80% of the work has already been done when the electricity is in the socket, when the milk is in the supermarket, or when the data is in CRM. So 80% of the work has already been done. And data makes the difference. Integrating then data together in an integration platform or making a pancake out of the milk, that is the remaining 20% of the work, but 80% has already been done. So we want to make the digital transformation to succeed, and that's why we have created a model that gives a standard how to really manage this 80% before the data is in CRM. So we need to have the data in CRM with good quality, solid definitions and so on, so that it is really usable, and that needs the management. So we need a new business mindset. The data is the focus area for the business. It is not something that the business leaders can outsource to somebody else, because without the data, you will actually lose all the capability to do the business. So with this, let's say, preview or starting point, I will hand over to Markus Sipila, who will then bring you through the operating model. So go ahead, Markus.
Seems that we have some challenges on changing the slide with multi-location. So
Yes. So you can stop it exactly, Teemu. You can stop the sharing.
No. We manage it.
Okay.
All right. Teemu, do you want to still cover this or?
So go ahead, Markus.
All right. So as Teemu highlighted over here, we need this new mindset with data. So when we're talking about digitalization, digital solutions, we're using the data from our business processes from those backbone systems. And it's actually the data that closes the zipper over here. And these new modern digital solutions that, for example, Antti from Osuuspankki or OP Finance was talking about, they're 100% dependent on the data that we are using there. And if we remove the data out of the equation, there's basically nothing left, which means that the mindset in the whole organization needs to be that data needs to be managed as a strategic business asset. It's a mindset thing which needs to go through the whole organization. That's basically in one sentence that what are we talking about. I'll continue with this about this operating model. As Petri mentioned in the beginning, this operating model was contributed to Business Technology Standard. For you that haven't heard about it earlier, it's more than 10 years old, as you can see from these fancy banners that we have over here. Business Technology Standard is an open management framework for managing business technology. I come from a company called Sofigate. We have been contributing to this standard for more than 10 years. You can find the whole operating model from managebt.org. Petri was also referring to, for example, Damas DMBOK. We're not trying to replace DMBOK at all. It definitely has its place, and it brings the depth of expertise. Why we chose to create this operating model for data management and data governance was that when Petri had this task at hand at Valmet, he came to the conclusion that DMBOK is not written in a business-oriented manner, that it's not a communicative tool for him to talk with the business stakeholders, that what are we talking about and how do you actually turn the data into value. And we are bridging that gap with this operating model. If we then think about that, okay, what does it mean to turn data into value? We've seen and heard many very insightful use cases in this yesterday and today. But if we think about this, that what is it then in general? When an organization is having this vision that, okay, we want to turn data into value, those business benefits that we're trying to achieve typically fall into these 6 categories that we have on the black background over there. We might be talking about operational and process excellence. For example, this cost savings with these chatbots is a perfect example of that. At the same time, it provides superior customer experience for OP Finance's customers. Everybody's talking about analytics and fact-based decision making, and it's basically one of the key drivers in every organization. Everybody's admitting that for sure and having that same thing. But in some cases, data might also enable new products and services, new operating models, business models, and even in some cases, direct monetization possibilities. So regardless of your industry, the business benefits of what turning data into value means, they typically fall into these 6 categories. If we then think about that, okay, what does it then take to realize these business benefits? Of course, you do need those modern technologies that we've been hearing this. but those modern technologies are only as good as the data that is fed into them. And I'm here to talk about with Petri and Teemu about that part. So if we think about that, what does it take so that you have good quality data that you can feed into these modern technologies? You need to start managing the data as a strategic business asset. You need to have the right people with right competencies and the culture over there. When you have the people, you need to have efficient operating models that how do you actually then work, how do those business as usual processes go. But one thing which is quite distinct, or maybe not distinct, but what is very typical for data is that if we think about how to organize the data function, you need this kind of a cross-functional approach for that. And the reason for that is that if you think about how business is organized, the business is typically organized by business processes that you have, for example, in Petri's case, you have the manufacturing processes over there, and then you have the sales folks over there, and then you have the service business. So the business is organized in these kind of process areas. If you think about how IT is organized, it's if you exclude enterprise architecture and a couple of other aspects of IT, they are then typically organized by system. That okay, we have now these ERP specialists, we have now these Salesforce specialists. So it's organized by systems. But the thing with data is that the data is actually crossing the process boundaries, and it is crossing the system boundaries, which means that the most efficient way to organize data is by data domains. So that you have, for example, your product data, and you have then the data specialists who understand how the product data is used or created in all of the business processes where it's used, and in all of the systems where it's used. So the data work is highly cross-functional by nature. And this is a very essential and critical success factor. If we hear about that journey from the journeys from the previous speakers, you can definitely say that it's a journey, a transformation journey, where you have different phases. So we recognize that there are three phases of maturity on this transformation journey to become data-driven. The first one is this awareness building. You start to realize that, okay, data has value and we need to do something. So the next thing is then to start establishing data governance and data management. The data platforms come into play at this moment. And then on the far right, some organizations really strive then to go to develop data-driven business models. Not all organizations are necessarily aiming even at this maturity or this kind of data business as in monetizing the data, but some organizations do. To summarize a bit so far, all these modern technologies that we have on the bottom right, whether it's the machine learning models, AI, edge computing, predictive analytics, and so on, all these technical tools which are highly sophisticated are absolutely needed. I'm not saying at all that those would not be needed. They are essential part of this equation. But even the most sophisticated tools and technologies are only going to be as good as your input data, what you feed into them. And that means that if we look at this left side of this slide, you need this mindset change or shift. The traditional data work has been very master data driven, and master data is more important than ever today. But the focus of data work needs to go much beyond the master data management. It's actually the transactional data that we are feeding to those machine learning models, which means that it is of essential importance that the data quality of that transactional data is top notch, so that you can then build these fancy machine learning models over there. In order to get that good quality into the source data, you need to have very clear ownership in business, so that business really takes the ownership of it, and you have the governance structures which actually then support these things. I was already talking about the cross-functional nature of data work. So this kind of siloed approach, that you let the silos be alone, that's not going to work. You need tight cooperation between business IT, and then the cross-functional data function is then facilitating them and breaking those silos. The more sophisticated tools you have, the more obvious it is that there is going to be some niche technologies over there which are built specifically for some purpose, which means that this kind of monolithic platforms is not anymore the name of the game. It becomes an ecosystem play, and then organizations needs to be able to manage that ecosystem. And then the last topic which I would like to highlight about this mindset shift is this proactiveness. If you only start to take the data in control and start to manage it when you have the innovation has already happened, that hey, let's do this, and then you realize that yeah, but we actually need this much from the data to be able to realize that vision, it might take months or years of data work to prepare the data into that state where you can then actually use it for your innovation. So if you're proactively managing data and making sure that it's of good quality and already on your data platform, the pipelines are over there so that the data is available, that's what I mean by proactiveness over here. That way you can then shorten the time to market from your innovation to the business benefits realization. So to summarize over here, the technology is essential and it's very crucial ingredient in this equation, but just as important is this mindset shift that you need so that you actually have some data that you can feed into this technological or solutions or tools. And that's then what this operating model for data management and data governance is for. So what I was talking about is this mindset shift, and that is an organizational change management thing. It's a transformation journey. The previous speakers were already talking about this citizen data scientists. So it's all about that. So it goes through the whole organization. It's also in those people, even though that they might not be analyzing the data, but they need to realize that it's crucial that the data entries are created properly and according to the working instructions and processes. This operating model, if we think about that, what does it then mean? So we have the data business and IT roles when it comes to data defined. It means it has the governance structures that how do you bring data to the relevant governance, but it is what kind of aspects do you need to take into account when considering that how do you implement this in your own governance structures. It's then I already talked about this operating model that so that when the roles are clear, then also the ways of working are clear. When we're talking about data management, it all starts from identifying your strategic data assets and data domains. So that's an essential part over there. And once you have then identified the strategic data domains and data assets, you need to then start to manage those data assets. So we have a framework or approach that what does that mean? And then what kind of services should the cross-functional data function or data team provide to the business? So that's basically what the operating model for data governance and data management is. You can download the white paper on this topic from managebt.org. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's an open management framework, so this white paper is publicly available over there, and you can download it from there. That's basically the short introduction over here, and we reserved time for discussion and questions over here. So I think that we have a bit more than 5 minutes for that. So we can stop the screen PowerPoint and focus on the real thing, which is then to the people and why you have come here.
Yeah, so and thanks Markus for the presentation, and Teemu too, and I'll close it the session by saying thanks to everybody, and if you are interested to hear more about this forum that we are building, you can connect me, Petri Hassinen, in LinkedIn. The kind of idea behind this is that not everybody has to reinvent things, but we can co-create and we can make the Nordic data community the best in the world. So that's what we are aiming for. But I think moving back to you for the questions, we seem to have like 7 minutes time. So
yeah, thanks a lot. Just the last comment was from Teemu in the chat area. If there is one thing you want to take with you from the presentation, it might be that data consuming technologies are the last link in your data supply chain. If the earlier link are unattended, the last link won't work either. So guys, if you have an opinion about that, you can add it on or ask questions. The participants now, Jon Pak from Danske Bank, can you share the link to the white paper in the chat?
Yes,
we will do that, yes.
Yes, okay, and now other questions? Waiting for participants to get engaged. Guys, you can raise hand so that we can give you a microphone to speak the participants, or you can type your questions just here. Eric is thanking as well for the presentation. It would be good if you rename your name with your company name as well, to know from which company you are joining the summit, the participants. So it seems still there is no question. If you have something to sum up or add, Petri.
Our presentation was clear, so it's only thanks to everyone. And
okay, we have one question from the company Posti from Finland, from Marco. How crucial is framework for success?
In my opinion, this was the reason why we did it, because if you don't have the framework, how do you actually get your data under control? So of course, it's a great question, because there's a lot of leadership and change management and actually doing work. But when you have a good framework, then you know what your model is, what you are implementing. So
I could also add that for typical things, we always have frameworks. If it comes from, let's say, retailing or finance or medicine or traffic, we always utilize frameworks. Data does not make any difference to that.
Good question, thank you.
Thanks a lot. So we are done. Just if you allow me, I continue with the next presentations. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks Musin for organizing, and everyone have a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
Bye-bye.
a lot. Thank you so much. I see questions still, but I didn't notice them. Now they are coming up. Petri, Petri, if you are with me still.
Yeah.
I always hear agile is the absence of structure. How does this work in your framework?
Could you repeat that?
Yes, so the question is from Dennis from Maersk. I always hear agile is the absence of structure. Mm-hmm. How does this work in your framework?
So we need to take that question all the way to the business technology standard, because there it outlines the full development operating model from requirement to delivery, and data is nothing specific to that, and it has these two models. It's the waterfall model, which is the structured approach, and then there's the agile approach. And I think in data there are certain things where you can do in an agile way, especially if your foundation is correct, then you can do agile things. But when you are setting up your data structure, quality architecture, cleaning the data up, agility is not always the first thing to do. So you need to find the balance between agile and waterfall model, and it's described in the BT standard that's kind of sitting on top of this data operating model.
If I continue on that, when you're actually then doing these innovative use cases, they are typically very iterative in nature, and then agile fits very well to that context. But just like Petri said, you need those like clear structures. How do you actually then manage your data so that you can use it in those agile projects? So these are two different aspects and angles to this. That the first thing is that you need to have the data so that you can then use it in an innovative way. And the key takeaway from this one is that if you think that, okay, the data comes from the database and you can just implement these cool technical things, it might work if your data happens to be in good quality, but it rarely happens by coincidence. It typically requires quite damn hard work to make it happen.
Thanks a lot for the explanation. There are still questions I see from Shafik from Grundfos, but there is a LinkedIn group. I'm sure Shafik, all of the colleagues will, Markus, Teemu, and Petri will be happy to reply you there. Okay, so you can have the questions later. Yeah, you can check the chat. You can check